In this video, I'll look at some camera navigation tools here in 3ds Max. Before I do that though, I'll start out by getting all of my plants to display correctly in the view. Right now, only the lilies are showing their texture and the others are, well, nicely white. I'll press M for my material editor. And in this material editor, I can see that I'm instancing one map, map 1, to all 4 materials, 3 of which I'm using. Leaves layout up here at the top was a layout material I used in getting the leaves on the texture. But the materials that are in the scene are our flowers, our lilies, and our banana. What we need to do then is make this map unique, and here's why. With one material selected, we can see that the Show Shaded Material in Viewport button is grayed out. Picking the map 1 and clicking on that button drops down a list that says which one would you like to show it on. Right now it's being shown on lilies but not on banana, flowers, or leaves layout. What I need to do then is to make this map unique by right-clicking on it and choosing Make Unique. This is not a good use of resources because now instead of loading that image once, I'm loading it 8 times. However, for layout here we can do this, and when we're done, go back under Utilities and instance the duplicate maps, returning it back to 1 map instead of 6 here. Now what I can do then is click on one map for each material and choose the Show Shaded Material in Viewport. I'll pick map 10 and show it, and finally 14 and show it. And now when I close my material editor, all the colors are displaying. Again, this is an interim step, useful for composition to see all of our colors, not good for rendering, as we're really increasing the amount of resources we're using. I'll also look in my scene in a top view, pressing T for top view and zooming out a little bit. What I'd like to do, knowing that the scene only exists in this square, is open up a bit of a clearing, so when I'm moving my camera around, I have a little bit of room to move. I'll delete one of these bananas, and maybe one of the small lilies. I'll pick one more banana and take it out, and also a flower or 2. This way, I've got a little bit of a clearing, so I can play with composing, looking down the open space here, and maybe dollying the camera forward in another video. To move a camera then, we can select it and press W to move just like any other object. I'll pull my camera into this view and press E to rotate, rotating on the Z-axis and framing that camera along this clearing. I'll press C for camera, and there's this view. I've also pressed Shift F, which turns off and on my safe frame, which I've set my render size to 1280 by 720, and so it gives me an accurate view of what will actually render. There may be some fixes here and there, such as leaves disappearing into the dirt and so forth, but those I can fix easily enough if I'd like, or I can simply let it grow down there. What I'm after though is setting up this camera view. This will be my starting view for my dolly shot, dollying forward in here in the clearing under this big leaf. Another shot will be maybe creeping over a leaf, looking at us. When we're moving a camera, we've got some other options besides clicking the mouse wheel in for pan. Down in the bottom right on the viewport navigation, there's Orbit, which looks like Saturn. Clicking and dragging with the Orbit tool in the view orbits that camera around. Clicking and dragging to orbit while holding Shift constrains the orbiting in the major direction of movement, in this case horizontally, for example. I can also dolly the camera forward and backward on the Z-axis. This is a physical move of the camera, not a zoom or not a lens change. In this case, I am moving this camera forward and backward, as we do in the real world with the camera on a dolly. I can also change the perspective, and if you don't like to simply pick a lens, there's a perspective tool right next to dolly. What this does, as we can see here, is change the lens. This is a zoom, and I am changing the field of view and focal length here, and we can see some really interesting things going on with the scene. As that lens gets smaller, the scene appears deeper and things start to fisheye out on the side. As that lens gets much, much bigger, we really start to see the depth in the scene flatten out. And things are very close up and there's no foreground-background distinction, or not as much. I'll pull this back out, or go back to my 35, and there's the depth in my scene again. Finally, there's Roll. What we may want to do sometimes is roll the camera somewhat off horizontal. A click and drag in the view with the Roll tool rolls that camera around on the Z-axis. This can let me add a unique perspective. Maybe I'm running through the jungle and scared, and the view is tilting. Or, in a classic Hitchcock or horror movie technique, I can use what's called a Dutch tilt. This tells the camera that something's wrong. I may even want to roll the camera completely over, as if I'm hanging upside down from a branch. To reset this though, reset the rotation. Press E to rotate with the camera selected, and go down to the absolute mode transform type in, down here in the bottom of the view. This actually shows up as the Y rotation, and I can right-click on the spinner and reset. It's the world Y and the local Z. That's where that comes from. Now I've got some tools in mind to position my camera, and I'll start by getting this first view in place. I'm going to start over a little bit on the trail so I'm not dead center, using one of the flower stems, I think, in the foreground here to frame the view, and letting the plants here guide me down. In the next video then, we'll look at how to move the camera and compose using the rule of thirds, but this is a great start for this camera. Let's also add in one more. I'll choose Create and Cameras and Free. In this case, I'll go in a front view by pressing F and click once to make my camera, right-clicking to stop. I'll open up this camera a little bit, changing down to a 28mm lens. I'll go in a top view and press F3 for a wireframe. There's my camera I just created, and I can go find my other camera. There it is in blue just under this lily here. I'm clicking in one place to cycle the selection. What I can do then is take this second camera and rotate it around. I'll say that this is the camera peeking out at somebody coming down the trail. I'll position it just behind that flower and press C for camera and F3 for shaded. I'll click the mouse wheel in to pan up and just frame this shot looking over a leaf. We're ready to see who's making noise coming down the trail, using the rock and the flowers here as framing devices. Again, I'll use the Orbit camera tool, orbit over a little bit, and pan by clicking the mouse wheel in. I'm also holding Shift here, so that pan is constrained on one axis. And there's that second shot set up. I'm ready to get in and animate my cameras, and we'll do that in the next video. But understanding how to move around cameras and frame the shot you want is crucial, because we'll use it in still and motion renderings.